Good morning. Text.
And maybe
From
Rav,
Jesus, the Holy Spirit. Okay.
Let me just mention what might be helpful. I don't know if it's possible, but what might be helpful is when we, for me at least, in learning the different moves, it was helpful to have like practical examples, maybe of like normal human communication we have as well. So yeah, just a thought.
Okay, it's actually, that's a good thing to do, is to make mashalim. So if you can think about it that way too, because what differentiates us from the other beings, at least the physical beings in the world, is that we have this complex manner of communication called language. Other animals do converse, but their ability is much more limited than the human being. So language for us is actually a very holy part of our existence. And as we said, that's how we communicate to the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we really have to understand how language works in order to get the right message from the Torah, which is Hashem's communication to us. That's his SMS message or his email that he sent to us. So each of us have to read it and understand it properly, or else we don't understand. Language is more complex than what other animals or insects have. They all have some sort of communication. But we have this complex way of communicating called language. And it's very important for us because, again, we want to communicate with Kodesh Baruch Hu as well with others to understand how it works. Okay, now, when we are trying to understand the Torah, we have to learn that there is a system of analysis that's going to be used. Everything is not stated in a very simple way. When you read a magazine article or a newspaper, so they're just declarative sentences, usually one after another. You don't have someone asking a difficult thing and bringing a proof. It's not a debate, so to speak, or an analysis. They're just telling you statement after statement after statement. But in our analysis of Torah, we have to understand how what the statement means in and of itself, and what it is in relationship to others. And because it exists within a context called the whole Torah, we have to be able to justify statement with statement and bring proofs that our understanding of the statement is really true. Okay, so the Ramchal. Okay, the Ramchal is going to break down communication into these 7 parts. And as we said, you can try this in your classrooms or with your workers or with your families. It's really something universal. And the first section that he speaks about is called the Mema, the statement. And the statement, we have 4 different types, and the second type has 3 subcategories. There's not very many. His whole idea here is to limit the amount of categories and subcategories. So they may look at first a little complex, but really, once you get into it, you'll understand that it's just things that you understand naturally. You just never organized it and looked at it that way. So good, you have a statement. A statement could either be, I'm going to tell it to you in the chart, I'm going to look at it inside because we're going to also have examples so we can see how it works. A statement comes in 4 types. You have the original statement. A person could say a statement, today is a wonderful day, okay? Or in the Gemara could say, Rebbe Akiva says, you have to give the best of your land. Okay, let's say he would say something like that. Okay, that's a statement, an original statement of Rebbe Akiva. That's called a first-hand statement. As opposed to later on, we're going to learn about statements which are not first-hand. They're reported by other people. And it's very important to make that distinction between if the person himself said it or someone said it in his name, because as we mentioned, we're always very careful about this idea of telephone with the kids and how messages can be changed as it goes through various people. So we always have to know, was it an original statement or was it a statement reported by someone who heard it, for instance? That would be reported information. Now, the other two categories in statement are parish. There, I am not making a statement, the sky is blue. I'm trying to explain someone else's statement. I'm making a statement of explanation. I'm saying this is what he meant when he said X, Y, and Z, okay? So that's not, that me explaining him, okay? It's not saying over what he said, that would be reported information, but it's me explaining some previous statement. It could also be other variations we'll get into. Now, when I explain a statement, my explanation, we'll do three subcategories very quickly, can be meruvach, dachuk, or nekimta, which means my explanation can fit very nicely into his words. They don't conflict any of the physical words being used. Or it could be pushing some of the words around and saying he didn't speak exactly precisely. That's called dachuk. Or I could say when that statement was made, it was made under certain circumstances. So if I say, I love Paris, and someone says, yes, when he said he loved Paris, it meant in the winter, but not in the summer. Okay, that would be an okimta because I don't change the words of the statement, but I do change the frame of reference. So those are the three types of explanations we can have. Meruvach means I don't contradict any of the words. My explanation is just expanding what he said. Dochuk means I push an explanation into the physical words, which make the words a little lavdavka, that means not exactly spoken. And nokimta means I put the whole statement in a frame of reference. The last two categories are called diuk. Diuk means an inference. Anything that's not stated there in black and white is called, in a statement, is called an inference. So if I say that all buses have wheels, that's the statement. So now I can make an inference. Anything that doesn't have wheels can't be a bus. That's called an inference, okay? It happens to be one of the, what we call the forced inferences, okay? If I say these were the last words of King David, it must mean they were first words, okay? Okay. If I say you have to give the best of your land, it means, I infer, you can't give anything less than the best, medium, or worse. Those are all inferences because they explain something inferred from what's being said. And the last type of statement, which you mentioned, is called agada, reported information. Now, let's go through his explanation of the first category. And as I said, in your own mind, you should think of applications. And then we're going to go into the Gemara. Well, he's going to give examples. And we're going to, once we understand what these categories are, we're going to see how that works in the text. And as I said, you in your own conversations with people will be able now to say, wait a minute, are you inferring that from what I said? Did I actually say that? Are you explaining what I said? Are you quoting someone that said something in my name? These are very important questions because, of course, if someone said something that I said, it could be that he didn't understand exactly what I said. Okay, so let's go now quickly into the statements, 4 parts, okay? So we have already, and please interrupt me whenever there's something that's not clear, okay? I'm going to be reading a lot because we have to get a certain structure down. After we get a structure, then we'll be much more free to participate and to apply these things. Okay, so he says like this. We've already described the principal elements of debate in chapter 2. They are statement, question, answer, contradiction, proof, difficulty, resolution. Now we'll describe their subcategories and explain their basic rules. In other words, he's going to do 2 things now, explain subcategories of these 7, and he'll tell you what criteria do we have? For instance, what is the criteria for a explanation to say that this is a good explanation or a poor explanation? Okay, so he's going to explain what the topic is and what the criteria are. Now, here we go. A statement. He says there's 4 types of statements, as we saw in the chart: first-hand knowledge, explanation, inference, and reported information. So let's go to the first one. A statement of first-hand knowledge, which we call a shmua. Shmua in Hebrew means shema, hear. I heard, to hear something from someone else in the first hand is called first-hand information. That's a memra shmua, a statement said in by the first party. The speaker communicates a halakhic or ethical principle or any other idea. He tells us one idea. He tells us, as he's going to say here, from Brachos. Rav Ada Ba'ava stated, he made the following statement: Torah law obligates women to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush. Okay, so he was telling us that as far as the mitzvah of Kiddush, it is from the Torah, not from the rabbi. So he's telling us one halacha, and he's stating it in his name, not in the name of someone else. Clear? That's called the first-hand knowledge of Shmuel. The rules governing statements of first-hand knowledge are the same as the principles governing statements which have already been explained in chapter 3. Now, of course, you haven't learned chapter 3. I haven't presented it. And the reason I'm not presenting everything is because I want to do little sections with applications, and I don't want to overwhelm you with a whole lot of information, which will turn into a little muddy understanding. I'd like you to have small bits that you can digest and hear about clearly. So there in chapter 3, I'll just tell you briefly, he tells us that statements are divided into 2 parts. In English, we would say it's a subject and a predicate. I say, this ball is red. The subject is this ball, and I'm telling you something about it. So a statement always is talking about something, this ball, and telling you something about it, okay? So on the side of subjects, subjects can be categorical, particular, or partial. I could say, all the Jewish people have a portion in the next world. So all the Jewish people is a categorical statement. I could say some of the Jewish people have a chalak in the next world. That would be a partial statement. Or I could say Moshe has a portion in this world. That would be a particular statement. So that's on the side of subjects. We have 3 subcategories. On the side of the predicate, we have 11 variations of the theme. And I won't go through all of them. You can read the book and eventually we'll get to them. But at this point, again, I'm trying to give you small bits. Statements could be if-then statements. They could be statements of a condition. It could be and/or statements. It could be and statements, this and this. He goes through the 11 basic formats of statements. Okay, so that'll be enough for that. But basically, first-hand knowledge is an expression of one statement, okay, and telling us one idea. Now, what's a parish? There, which is, in other words, we have a memra parish. Someone is making a statement of explanation. Here, the speaker's purpose is to explain a verse or a prior statement. This is not an original statement, a shmua. It's someone else who is taking someone else's statement and explaining it. For example, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked, what is the value of a ritual bath for those accustomed to immerse in the morning? Okay, that was his question. Why does someone have to go to a mikveh in the morning? Okay, so the Gemara has a difficulty. What do you mean, what's the value? Rabbi Yeshua himself stated that one who has a nocturnal admission may not engage in Torah activities until he immerses. This, by the way, was a takana of the Nevi'im, which later was nullified, okay? But people do go to them. Some people, Hasidim go every day to the mikveh, not only, other people do also, but it's not a obligation. It's only an obligation on Yom Kippur, but other times it's not. Okay, so, but anyway, at the time of the Gemara, when a person would have a nocturnal admission, he would have to go to the mikveh before studying. Okay, so Rabbi Yeshua said, well, why should you go to a mikvah, ritual bath? So the Gemara says, well, well obviously you're going to the ritual, to the mikvah in order to get rid of the tamei, of the impurity. So his question now does not make sense. What do you mean? What's the value of a ritual bath for those accustomed to a reverse in the morning? Doesn't make any sense. It's obvious the answer. So you wouldn't ask a question that's obvious. The Talmud then offers an explanation. This is what he meant. Okay. Whenever I say this is what he meant, I am explaining someone's statement. What is the value of a ritual bath containing 40 saws? It is possible to be purified with only 9 cups of water. Okay, so the question was, why does one, after an eternal mission, have to go to the mikveh, which is 40 saws, that big bath item, and he could just go and take a shower. Okay, the shower would be good enough. 9 cups is a small amount of water that he can pour over his head. So that was the question. Okay, and we explained at first Rabbi Yeshua's question was not understood, since it goes without saying that a mikveh is beneficial to get rid of impurity. But afterwards, it was explained that there's an alternative method of purification that we wouldn't need to go to the mikveh, which is pouring over the head. Okay, so the question of Rebbe Yeshua was, why does one have to go to the mikveh? He could just pour 9 cups of water over his head and then study Torah. So that was the explanation of this question, okay? Rebbe Yeshua and Levi said, what is the value of ritual baths for those accustomed to immerse in the morning? He was not asking a general question. He was asking a question of, why do we need a mikveh? We could just use 9 cups. So that was an explanation of his question. Notice, an explanation doesn't have to be of a statement. It could also be of a question. Okay, but what is being offered is a statement of explanation of someone else's statement, or in this case, a question. You with me on that? So that's the first type. The first type, it's actually the second type. You have the original statement and you have someone explaining someone else's statement. Good. Now, what are the rules governing a explanation? When the explanation is in total agreement with the text, it is called a perush meruvach. There's certain explanations which don't change any of the nuances of language in the text. Okay, but there's certain explanations which do. So for instance, if I say to you, Hashem put his hand in Mitzrayim, right? We just had Pesach a while ago. It says in the Chumash, Hashem put his hand in Mitzrayim. Literally, that means that Hashem has a hand. Okay, so the Parish Meruvach, the literal or the direct explanation would be that Hashem has a hand. We know Hashem does not have any bodily parts. So we then have to give what's called a Parish Dochuk and say, no, this statement was meant to be said as a mashal, as a, how do you say mashal? An allegory, a metaphor. Okay, it's metaphorically speaking, he has a hand. So explanations can be faithful to the text or can say that the text is not speaking in its simple way, but speaking allegorically, or it's not speaking 100% accurately. It's speaking with a little bit of fuzziness in it, okay? Now, as again, we will demonstrate these things as we learn. But I really feel we have to let him give us the framework, and then we can really work out the slight differences. But okay, so when you're explaining someone else's words and there's no contradiction between them, I'll tell you a nice little story. When I was at the yeshiva, we had a little cold area there, and one of the children said to her friend, "Go away." So her father said, "That's not nice to say." She said, "Abba, I meant go away to her mother." She has, today she's a woman with a lot of children. That's called a parish dochuk. The simple meaning of go away was, go away, get out of here, right? So to say, go away to your mother, and I was being nice, is called a parish dochuk. You hear the difference? So when I make an interpretation, I always have to classify whether it's following the simple meaning of the words or it's not. Okay, now it doesn't mean if it doesn't follow the simple meanings, it's wrong. You just get points always for following the simple meaning. But as we said, Hashem doesn't have a hand, so many times statements have to go out of their simple meaning, and that's called a perish dachuk. The third method is called, another type of explanation is based on a method of clarification called a condition. It's very hard to explain okimta in an English word, okay? It means frame of reference. I just use the word conditional, but frame of reference. Here, the purpose of the explanation is not to deal with the wording or formal structure, but rather to clarify the presumed or understood stipulations of a given statement. In other words, the statement was said in a context. I'm not changing the words of the statement, I'm changing its context. The text is left to be understood in its primary meaning. However, the explanation qualifies the statement by clarifying an unstated assumption. This conditioned explanation is commonly preceded in the Talmud by the phrase, here, what case are we dealing with? Or whose opinion is presented? Here, it's Rabbi so-and-so. In other words, let me spell this out. When the Gemara presents a statement, and does not define which rabbi said it. So we presume it's held by the majority of rabbis. When we see that this couldn't be held by the majority, because there's other rabbis that disagree, we're forced to limit the statement and say, no, this statement was not meant to be a general statement. Meant to be a statement in a certain frame of reference, okay? So like Devorah, like this wonderful little girl said to her father, no, I didn't mean go away, meaning go away from me. I meant it in a different context. I meant go away to your mother. So I changed the context that I was speaking in. Simply go away means go away from me, but I changed the context. So if I say, I love Paris, and then I tell you that's only in the springtime, so that means I'm limiting the frame of reference. So that's called an akimta. Now, that also is a type of perish dachuk because it doesn't follow the simple statement as it is, but it rather puts it into a context, okay? So here, in brachas, he gives an example, hachi b'mai skinan. When the Gemara says, well, this is not a general case, this is a specific case. Or when the Talmud states, those who say their prayers out loud are lacking faith. And Rav Huna adds, this only refers to those who are able to concentrate in silent prayer. Okay, so it means that if it doesn't mean out loud, out loud literally means loudly. When people are davening Shemona Esrei, you're not supposed to be davening Shemona Esrei loudly because that's going to upset people. But also here it says that if you say Shemona Esrei out loud, so you don't have trust that Hashem hears you. So Rav Huna says, wait a minute, we have to put this in a context. This only refers to those who are able to concentrate in silent prayers. In other words, if you're able to relate to the Kodesh Baruch Hu through whispering quietly, so then you should not say your Shemona Esrei out loud. But if you can't, then it is permissible. So the original statement looked like a general statement. Anyone who says Shemona Esrei that other people can hear him are called people who don't have faith, like Hashem is deaf, he doesn't hear you. The answer is that's not true. We're talking about people who are unable to concentrate in silent prayer. Those people can say things out loud, and if people who can concentrate by saying things quietly, if they say it out loud, they're lacking faith. But people who can concentrate by saying things quietly, so it's okay for them to say things out loud. Okay, so those again that was an akimta that we limited. We thought we had a general phrase that anyone who says Shemona Esrei loudly is lacking faith. And the answer is no, that's not true. It's only if he could have said it quietly and now he's saying it out loud. Okay, so we put that statement in a frame of reference. Again, I'm talking a lot. I'm going quickly. I hope what will happen is you'll read this again, and then I will go through a text with you, and I'll ask you which type of statement it is, and then you'll crystallize these ideas. An inference, okay? An inference is called a diuk in Hebrew. A statement that's where a statement is derived from another statement or verse, a derivation. The purpose of an inference is to make an assertion which is not explicit in the first statement. It's a derivative. For instance, here's an example. One who has a nocturnal admission should recite the words of Shema in his mind, okay? So he shouldn't say Shema Yisrael out loud. He should just think about it. Ravina said, we can now make an inference from this statement. This statement implies that reciting something in your mind is the same as reading out loud, since you have an obligation to say Kriyat Shema out loud. And since you couldn't in this time, and yet the halach is you still must say it, but only in your mind and not verbalize it. So we can make an inference that thinking things are like saying things. Okay, that's called an inference from what is being said, because it's not the subject and predicate of the statement. It's something that you can learn out from the statement. Okay, and he says the rules are in chapter 5. Again, we have all the rules of how you make an inference and what's called an inference that's from the statement and what's an inference that could be true, not true.
Rabbi,
now, I'm going to go through report. Yes. Let me just do reported information, and then I'm going to throw this out to the group, and then you can ask me anything you want. I just want to do the first part with you, okay? The last one is reported information. The speaker's purpose is to inform us about someone else's deed or statement. That means report. He's telling what someone else said. It's a reconstruction of or a reconstruction of someone else's opinion. That's also considered reported information. In this case, the speaker informs us of something that others should consider either a difficulty or a solution according to the stated view. For example, Rabbi Tzadok said this was the custom in the school of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel did not tell us what he used to do, but Rabbi Tzadok said this is what he saw in Rabbi Gamliel's house. So he's reporting information. Furthermore, the next one in Baba Kama, the difficulty which might have occurred to the Tana is why is it preferable to derive a law from one who strikes an animal? It is better to derive it from one who strikes a man. In this example, the Talmud reconstructs the Tana's difficulty regarding the law of the Mishnah. Okay, I would have to go inside with you. Basically, the Tana had a certain problem. He didn't state what his problem was. The Gemara is now telling you what his problem was. So that's called secondhand information telling you about. We'll stop here at this moment, throw everything open to the floor, and we're free to comment on anything that we've just said. Right
so
now.
on that last one, are you choosing that last one you just said, strike a man versus strike an animal, because there will be more severe repercussions based on human to human interaction than human to animal interaction, and therefore it would serve like a Gezerah Shava or something where, you know.
Exactly. Okay. Now I'm not going into all the details there, but you're definitely 100% on the right track. Okay. We're trying to explain why he did what he did. Okay. So that's not him talking. It's us trying to explain. Very, very important, because someone else then can come in and give a different explanation, and then we'd have to debate back and forth which one is the better of the two explanations. You with me? So that's a very important distinction. Also, in life, you'll see, did you hear it from the person himself, or did someone tell you about it? When you have reported information, as we mentioned, there's a lot of filtering that can occur when things are reported, okay? Sometimes we call that bias, but you can't help that. If the original person didn't say it, so it requires a reconstruction of a person's ideas, and hopefully you'll do that accurately, but you have to be careful, because other people can either reconstruct it differently or explain that you're weighting something improperly. Okay, yes, any other questions here?
One other question.
On these four
I don't know exactly which category it fit in, if it was forced or conditioned, but it's the example that you used when you had said that Hashem had his hand in it. And in many things that we discuss, we use this type of framework to sort of overlay something that will make us understand something in sort of physical or, sort of localized ideas or concepts relative to today and now, which are not exactly what you would call the spacious or the original statement. It's something that's sort of modified. And so would you find that, are any of these explanations more used than others, or is my statement even accurate to what I'm trying to say?
Okay, bring up a great point, really a great point. It has a lot of ramifications. I'm going to try to be as brief and to the point as possible. First of all, we're trying to accurately explain someone's statement. We're not trying to change the frame of reference. Like in today, there's a big problem in America, whether you go after the original intent of the founders of the Constitution or not so. I don't know if you guys are involved in that, but that's an interesting legal problem. Are you allowed to say, do we go after original intent of the Constitution? That's the document. Or no, we're allowed to now say times have changed and they're. Now, we're not going to be dealing with that distinction, okay? We are trying to understand the person's statement as it is. We're not trying to change it. So therefore, when we're trying to explain what the person actually meant or what Hashem actually meant in a pasuk, our explanations fall into two categories. Sometimes they fit nicely into the words, and sometimes we have to explain them in a frame of in context. In both cases, I'm trying to tell you what Hashem really meant or what the rabbi really meant. But not all times can I explain a statement cleanly that doesn't affect the words, it doesn't affect the content, because it's not true, okay? Which ones I use the most? I can't tell you which ones I use the most. I'll tell you that you always get credit. If there's a difference of opinion between two people, you always get credit for a perish maruva over a perish dochek, a more spacious than forced. In other words, if two people are debating and they come to an explanation of a pasuk and one is forced to say a explanation which doesn't fit precisely in the words, he loses points. I explain many times, again, I don't do boxing, but there's something called in boxing a knockout and a technical knockout, a TKO. Okay, so when people are arguing also for the meaning of the text, and here we're talking about either a verse or what a rabbi said, we give points. There's such a thing as we'll see is a knockout completely, which means that what you're saying cannot be the interpretation of the text. And there's another time where we say, well, you get points here because your explanation fits more nicely or pleasantly in the text than mine does. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to get knocked out because I can explain, the explanation does fit, but it just means that it's always preferable to get a cleaner explanation than one that is forced, okay? I hope I explained that correctly to you. Any other questions?
Yes.
On this first part? Yes, please.
I'm not thrilled about the example on the diuk. Okay, I know the rabbis taught me not to get caught with my foot in my mouth, so I would need help understanding the example because it says there's the nocturnal emission, and then so the person has to say it. He can't say it out loud. But it seems like that's a limited case. So then in a limited case, if we're going to say that something has a special din, a special din, then how can we apply that back to all cases? It seems it doesn't, I mean, we could make a diuk that in the limited case that it serves the purpose of being as if it's out loud, but not in all cases.
Good question, okay? Now, that's something that we're going to have to investigate when we investigate that particular issue, but it's a general, what you're bringing up is a general problem, let's put it that way. Whenever a statement is made, it could always be a statement which is unique or a statement which represents a class of cases. This is something that we're going to have to be involved in whenever we talk about the Chumash or when people speak. Are they talking generally or are they talking specifically? So I always bring up the little thing your wife says to you, or your mother, whatever, bring me a Kleenex, and you bring her Kimberly Clark. And she says, I wanted a Kleenex, not a Kimberly Clark tissue. I'm sorry. So you said, come on, Kleenex meant you wanted a tissue. I mean, you know, so this is a problem in communication, but it's also a very serious problem when we come to understanding a Torah law. Sometimes the laws are limited and sometimes they're expansive. And that's something that we have to talk about in time and place, because you cannot make a general rule. There are general rules about it. I'm not going to get into them now, but it's something that has to be discussed, okay? So in that particular example, it's true. It could have been a specific case. Why did they generalize it? So they must have felt by making the inference that it was not being brought for the specific instance, but it was being brought as a general rule. And of course, the objection will be made, like you said, maybe it's only a general rule, and then we'll have to prove whether it's general or specific. Okay? So it's a good point, something that has to be investigated a little, case by case, as they used to say in the old country. Any other questions about our first category? Okay, so let's go on to our second category. And again, a lot of information, but it's really, as we get into it, you'll see you do it all the time. You're always conversing with people, you're always discussing things. You just never label what you're doing. You never say to a person, wait a minute, are you making a statement or are you inferring something from what he said? Okay, usually people don't stop and ask that question and they don't even think about it because they think it's obvious, but many times it's not obvious, and many disputes develop, whether it be in family, workers, or in Torah, because of this lack of being on the same page, we used to say in the old country. Okay? A lot of these phrases I get from, I say the old country because I'm here, Baruch Hashem, in Yerushalayim. So for those of you in the old country, Baruch haba. Okay, I'm not, okay, let's go right there. All right, let's go to the second category. Now, the second category that he brings up is the category of Shayla. Now, if you notice, I put these as double categories because they, at least I'll explain, one goes hand in hand. In other words, when you ask a question, you expect that someone is going to give you a response, correct? So on the Gemara page, if someone asked a question, we could predict that the next thing is happening is a response, all right? So those two goes hand in hand. As a person asks a question and someone responds to it. The other pair over here is a kasha and a teretz. When someone presents a difficulty, we can predict that the Gemara is going to solve that difficulty. That goes hand in hand. All right. And proofs and disproofs happen to be opposites, but have they're also partners in a certain way. You either bring evidence that something is true or evidence that brings something is false. Okay, so that's why here we're talking about the Shayla and the Tshuva. The Shayla has two types: a simple question, how are you? How old are you? When were you born? And something called an Ibaya. Best word we used, David, my father used a question of principle. But if you look up on a Google map how to get from Dallas to San Antonio, let's say, so you'll get 5 different routes. Why would you get 5 different routes? Because there's pluses and minuses in each one of them, and Google can't figure out which one you'd rather have. Would you rather spend time and pay a toll, or would you rather not pay the toll and take a little longer? Okay, whatever. So because of that, they give you these 5 different routes. So when you say to your wife, we're going to San Antonio, let's say, she says, well, are we going A, B, C, D, or E, according to Google. So, and that's called an Ibaya. Ibaya is a question where you present the various sides of a question. Okay. Now, to the answer of a simple question is called a tshuva. So if I say to you, how old are you? And you tell me you're 53, or I say, where were you born? You tell me I was born in New York. So that's shayla and a tshuva, simple shayla. But if I ask you in Iboye, are we going to go this route or that route? I'm giving you two different alternatives. And the response to that is called a peshitut, or determination. You expect that someone is then going to say, we're taking route A and not route B. So there's two types of questions, one where I present the sides and one where I don't present the sides. Clear? Now let's look inside.
Kind of like almost like a open-ended question versus a yes/no type of like a
yes, no is, well, yes, no is definitely one of the first types, but it's not the only type. How old are you is not a yes/no question, right? But if I say, how old are you, 25 or 35, then already I'm giving you alternative solutions, and I'm asking you to make a decision. Okay.
Rabbi,
so let's go through. Yes,
just
please.
Real quick on a clarification. Go back up to the top because you're clicking. Please. So, you know, I'm moving much slower because I don't have the Hebrew. I don't have the vocabulary. So when you say two types of questions and then you click down on number 3 on the answer, I'm like trying to figure out what that says. And I don't know if you're still talking about the two types of questions being a query and a principle, or you're referring to the response and determination because you're moving the mouse around.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
Can you just recover the question part again real quick?
Let's go again. Let's go. And I put on the bottom, okay? It means that's why. Anyway, two types of questions: a shayla and an ibaye, that's aleph and bet, or a query or a question of principle.
Got it.
What's the difference between those two types of questions? One does not ask for any determination. It just says, how old are you? The other one says, are you 25 or 35? So I tell you both sides. That's the difference between a simple question, which we're going to call a query, a shayla, and a question of choice, A or B. Clear?
Clear.
So you have a simple question, a question of choice. Now, if you're going to respond to those two questions, the response to a simple question is called a tshuva, or a response. So we have a query and response. Are you with me?
Yeah. So response.
The query is the response is the response to the query. Correct.
Correct.
So if I say, how old are you? And you say, I'm 55, that's a response to my query. Okay. If I say to you, are we going route A or route B? And you tell me route B, that's called a determination. You have determined which route to take. You with me? Yep. So the determination is the answer to the two-sided question.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, clear?
Yeah. Clear.
Great. Okay, very important. These are simple rules. You know about them subconsciously. We're just trying to bring everything out in the open so that we understand it fully. And when we're talking, we can then use these distinctions and understand each other clearly. And of course, understand the Torah and Hashem. What to use the translation. Okay, question. The category of question has two parts. The first is a query or a point of information. And the second is a question of principle, meaning A or B, okay? A query or a shayla, the speaker asks for confirmation or denial, like David said, yes or no, of a statement, or about some specific circumstance, such as place, time, or cause. I ask you the age of something. I ask you which direction do you pray towards, okay? I say, what time of day do you say Kriyat Shema? Those are all queries or she'elot, okay? He gives examples. Here's a yes/no question. I asked him, are you familiar with the rulings of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira? What would we presume will be the next line in the Gemara? Yes or no? Or tshuva, yes or no, right? Okay, so that's a simple question. Here's another one. What is the proper blessing on fruits? Okay, so I'm not saying to you, do on this piece of fruit, do we say Brei Pri Adamo or Brei Pri Eitz? I'm asking, I'm not giving you a choice. I'm saying, here's a piece of fruit. What blessing do I say on it? And the response is going to be Brei Pri Eitz. Okay, so just that's a simple question. No two sides, just a simple question. The third one, what is the difference between deaf mutes for whom the rabbis ordain that marriage is value and the insane for whom marriage is invalid? The rabbi said that people who are deaf and cannot speak can get married, midrabanan, but they said a person who's insane cannot get married. So the question is, explain the difference between case A and case B. So I'm not trying to say one is, I'm not giving you two different choices here. I'm trying to say, why is the law different from A to B? Okay, those are simple questions, 3 examples of simple questions, okay? Now, we have the iboye. Here, the speaker presents a certain topic which may be understood in one of 2 ways, and he asks for a decision. For example, Reb Chia Bar Yosef presented the following question to Shmuel. Now, this is a little bit complicated. We'll go through it. What is the law when a girl is betrothed to a Kohen Gadol and she subsequently reaches adolescence? So let's understand the prohibition of an adolescent girl to a Kohen. Now, what's the question? The Kohen, is the Kohen Gadol prohibited to marry her as the later stage of adolescence, even at the later stage of adolescence, even though he had betrothed her earlier? Or is he permitted to marry her at the later stage of adolescence since he had betrothed her before adolescence? Okay, I'm just going to read it and I'll explain it a little bit. In this question, adolescence refers to a certain stage of puberty during which it cannot be determined whether the girl is a virgin, and it is required by law to it's required by Torah law that a Kohen may marry a virgin. I.e., here's the question. Okay. Unlike anyone else, the Kohen Gadol must marry a virgin. That's the Kohen Gadol, a basur. Okay. Now, if he there's 2 stages of marriage. Okay, the first stage is called kedushin, the second called nisuin. One is like nowadays it's a little complicated because we do them together. When you give your wife a ring, that's called kedushin. Okay, that's the act of marriage. When you take her home and live with her, that's called betrothal. Okay, they used to wait a year in between the 2. They used to get the houses together and everything, but for many centuries we do them together. We do the ring under the chuppah. Now, the question is, the Kohen did the first, okay, and therefore she was already betrothed to him as a virgin, but she hadn't, let's see again. Is he permitted to marry her at this latest stage of adolescence, even though he had betrothed her earlier? So maybe she's not considered a virgin because they did the first part of kedushin, or maybe it's only the later stage which that we're concerned with. Okay. Between you and me, I'm not going to get into all the details of this complex halacha, okay? But basically, we want to know at what point is she not considered a virgin anymore, at the first stage of marriage or at the later stage after puberty. That's the problem here. So there's 2 sides. It could be that we consider her a virgin only at the first stage, not the second, or even the second, she can be considered as a virgin. So that's a question that has 2 sides. That's all we're trying to bring here, or he's trying to bring here. That's called an iboye. Okay? Now, the tshuva, the third category, answer, is likewise divided into 2 parts. An answer to a query and the answer to a question of principle, which is called a determination. An answer, the first one, a tshuva, the speaker responds to a query according to whatever is sought, meaning if the query involves the affirmation or denial of a certain fact, then the response must be yes or no. And if the query is about the reason for something, then he has to give a reason. So for example, when the question was asked, are you familiar with the rulings of Rabbi Yehuda ben Becerra? So the response happened to be in the Gemara, yes. Could have been no, but that's called a response to a question. The Talmud asks, what is the difference between the deaf mute and the insane person? Okay, whereas the deaf mute, the rabbis allowed marriage, the insane person not. So the response tells us the difference. Since the deaf mutes are capable of fulfilling rabbinical laws, the rabbis have deemed their marriage is valid because a person who is deaf or can't speak can do rabbinical laws. But in the insane, since he's incapable of even doing rabbinical laws, they did not institute rabbinical marriage for that person. So we explained the reason for the difference between these two cases. But those are simple questions. And we just responded to what the questioner asked. Okay, he says, similar question may be found for all the other types of questions. Requirements of an answer are that the response must be appropriate to the query and it must be true. There's two things. Your answer has to be an answer to the question. It can't be an answer to, it can't be something that doesn't answer the question. And also it has to be true, of course, and not false. Last one, in this box. The response decides the question of principle in one direction or the other. For instance, when we asked, is the Kohen Gadol permitted to marry an adolescent to whom he was betrothed when she was a child? Shmuel determined that the prohibition of adolescence applies to him and that the marriage, even though he was already betrothed, at the time of marriage, even though he was already betrothed, and therefore he is not permitted to marry at the time of adolescence, okay? So he came down on the second side that the Kohen Gadol cannot now marry this woman who he had only betrothed in the beginning. Okay, so that's like silly answers. So I would say, okay, which way do we go? Do we go Google Maps A or B? And then I would tell you, Peshitas, well, we're going to go B because you want to save the money. We don't go through the toll roads, even though it's going to take us more time. Okay, so questions at this point. Any questions on the tshuva, the simple question and the two-sided question?
We have about 4 minutes left.
Yes.
So I kind of have a question is, how do we determine if something's a question? Because there's different vantage points. There's the person who's saying it themselves. There's the person who's hearing it. There's objectively whether or not something's is it based on the intention? Is it based on the way it's received? How do we analyze that?
Okay, again, it's going to be time and place. We don't really want to make a distinction in our in trying to discover the truth of something. He's going to explain that doesn't matter if a person brings up a question himself or he brings up a difficulty himself and answers it. But he's going to explain that it doesn't really matter who's asking and answering and what the important point is that questions are not attacks on another person's position. That's the important thing to remember. They're only trying to clarify information, and that's the important point. Unlike we're going to see when people object to what you're saying. That's a whole other world. When you ask a question, you're not objecting to what anyone's saying. You're just asking for information. Now, a lot of people make that confusion. And if you ask a question, you're saying, what, you don't think I'm saying something correctly? No, I just don't understand something. I'm not denying what you're saying. I'm just asking you for some clarification. So people make these mistakes all the time, okay? But what makes something a question? There's key words that we know. If I say the word ketzad, or if I say manishtana, so there's words, there's key words that will cue you into the question that's being asked. There's inflection, there's context. There's a lot of different variations that will determine whether something is a question or a difficulty. And as we do the learning, we'll get more and more sensitive to that. But basically, we have to know that a question is not an attack on anyone. A question is only asking for information. It's not trying to bring up a difficulty or deny what the other person's saying. You're just saying, I have a lack of information. Okay? Yes. Any other questions at this point?
Thanks, guys. I got to jump to my next point.
Okay, great. So this was remember, this is an introduction. We're going to do the other two the next time, and then we're going to actually take a Gemara piece and start applying what we just learned. So we have to learn theory and then do practice. If we don't, then you won't have the conscious learning and you won't really gain fully from what we're doing.